Alrighty, folks, we have everybody back at the table, so I'll look to resume the regular meeting of council for Monday, October 24th, 7 p.m. No agenda changes that I'm aware of today, so looking for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Public participation time. We do have a few members of the public. You are welcome to address us at the microphone. Happy to hear from you, so if there's anybody that would like to, come on up. Could you come to the microphone, please, and just your name and address for the benefit of our recording staff?
My name is Jimmy or James Miller, and I'm here on item number 5.1, the correspondence requiring council direction. I apologize, I've got the common cold that's going around right now. I live in Saanich, so that's 3501 Richmond Road. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Well, I thought you guys would be asking me some questions.
No, we haven't got to that one there. It's just if you wanted to make any points around that letter that you presented, Jimmy, that would be good.
No, I'm ready to speak when we get to that.
Okay, if council has any questions, we'll...
Okay, I'm saying start talking.
Okay, all right. When we get there.
Last time I came here, I've spoken to you guys once before, and it was a bit of a lukewarm reception because the loss of a skate park beside the the CanWest Mall was a blow to the skateboard community and a blow to the BMX community and a blow to the scooter community and beyond. There was a lot of kids that used that, and young adults and older adults such as myself. Being a person outside of the community, I still feel as though it represents a place for all of us to ride. And that loss is something that we don't want to be unnoticed. We want to make sure that we can facilitate the youth in the best way that we can. And at this point, we want to follow up on the ask, and we certainly sent a cheeky email in the sense of, where are we at? What's going on? How can we do this? We have formed ourselves into a non-profit organization. We've been around for over a year. We're fundraising. We're not so much languishing, but we have an outstretched hand. We want to make sure that we move forward in the way that you guys see fit and we see fit. We want to do it in a way that's amicable and positive for the community. We want to make sure that nobody gets left behind. With skateboarding in the 2020 Olympics,
yes,
and so many other sports being facilitated. And I always say that I'm hesitant to call skateboarding a sport because I see it as a discipline, I see it as an art form, I see it as so many different things. But it's been my constant companion for the last 25 years, and short of my body giving out on me, it's not something that I can stop doing. So if I can advocate on behalf of the local youth, or like I said, some of us that are a little bit older, I'm certainly willing to do so.
Thank you.
Cool.
Anyone else from the public? Certainly.
Just to continue on with what Jim was saying, my name is Craig Hanna. I'm a Colbert resident for 18 years, and been a lacrosse and soccer coach for about, 20 years going on. And anyhow, just to go on about the skate park, got my boy here who started skateboarding about 8, now he's 12. And taking away that skate park was like taking away all the basketball courts out of Colwood, or taking all the soccer pitches out of Colwood. It would be the same thing. If not, having skateboarding as an Olympic sport now really increases the profile of skateboarding. As a coach, I was I've always been taught physical literacy, which is where you've learned a sport and you carry it on into adulthood and you stay physically active. This is, and I believe skateboarding is a part of that whole physical literacy where everybody, in their own way, finds a way to get out and move. And I see lots of kids out there skateboarding in parking lots, getting chased around by securities, just finding a place to skate right now. And I think it's a shame that when we have the California of Canada right here. You know, the West Coast, and we don't have a skate park for these kids, which is a huge demographic out here. And, you know, we could, you know, say, well, we can give them a few benches or something in a parking lot, sure. Or we could go really big, and we could do something like they did in Calgary with Millennial Skate Park, with, you know, Toronto has great skate parks. I mean, Vancouver, UBC has some really nice skate park that are made downtown Victoria. They're adding on to their skate park. So I would like to take the stigma away from skateboarding. First of all, I know you guys might think that it's a bunch of kids hanging out, smoking dope. It's not like that. I mean, you know, it's a bunch of kids going out and being active and having a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. And anybody else?
Yes, Kerr, the owner of 3314 Fulton. So when we get to the variance permit portion, if you have any questions, I'll be here to answer them. And I'm surprised I didn't hear about the skateboard park, but if I can add to that, I'd rather them have a safe place to go than I live by Latoria Walk there, and there's always no skateboard, no this, no that, but as well, like it would be the same to me if I was a skateboarder. I was never allowed to have one because I'd break an arm or something like that. But I can, oh yeah, I even cut it, drew it out for my grandpa to cut it out in the bandsaw, but it wasn't happening. So I bought a motorcycle instead. Yes, no, I totally feel the plight. And like if you were into soccer and you had all the soccer pitches taken away, that's a great point there. So I like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Mayor's message, just a few points to note. We have the best Chamber of Commerce Best of Westshore Business Awards. It is coming up on Wednesday evening. It is a sold-out event at the is it Olympic View? I think this year. Golf course. There is also our first of our discussion talks on our OCP Making Waves on October 27th. The next one will be November 3rd. Both start at 6:30 at the Royal Bay High School. And we also have the Legion coming in on Friday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. to raise the Poppy Flag in honor of the Poppy Flag fundraising session for 2016. So any of the members of council or the public are welcome to meet at the front of City Hall and as they raise the flag. Anybody from council with anything that had happened over the last 2 weeks? Didn't really see anything on our radar screen on that. Anyway, so moving on, looking to adopt. We have 2 sets of minutes, one from the regular meeting on October the 11th, another the minutes of the public hearing for August the 29th. All those in favor? Oh, did you have a hand in the air for?
I did have a hand in the air. I just wanted to note that I've requested that my vote be recorded in opposition, and I'm trying to get to my right page for you. I think page, lost it now. It's here somewhere. Page 17. There it is. Page 17 on 8.7 for 2350 and 2356 Zook Road.
Thank you. Just wanted to make it clear. Perfect. With that, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Looking to receive a number of sets of minutes, one for the public hearing August the 29th, also Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues for September 15th, Heritage Commission August 17th, Heritage Commission on September 14th, and Planning and Land Use Committee on September 20th.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. First off, on our correspondence letter that we received from our Westshore Skatepark Coalition, there has been an overview and a bit of a background provided. Discussion, Council?
I'll move initially I'll move to receive for discussion. Worship.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Any discussion on that? I would just... Cynthia?
Thank you. I would just like to note that I've certainly been involved meeting with, when I was a member of the board at Westshore Parks and Rec, I attended the meetings there, and I have tried to stay on top of the issue in terms of finding a location for a skate park in the West Shore and finding the best way to ensure that it is a vibrant, well-accepted piece of equipment that's well used and well supervised. It does appear that the best avenue for making that happen is through a partnership, at the very least, as it was before with Westshore Parks and Rec. And the stumbling block seems to be that the grounds at Westshore Parks and Rec are pretty much full. There's not really a lot of locations left there to find it. So I think, a satellite home needs to be found. And I think that we need a plan to come forward from the users to show us what it is that we need so that we could know, would that site work or wouldn't it work? If and when we can get some agreement to find a site for that. And I understand that there are some issues with the structure at Westshore Parks and Rec in terms of achieving agreement on any new capital investments. So I just wonder, perhaps Councillor Martin can offer some illumination how we might form that going forward.
Sure. What can I say? Westshore Park and Rec is definitely interested and understands the importance that it is a sport, just like any other basketball or anything else. And I think it would definitely be a positive asset within the Westshore community. It's a matter of finding out where to put it is obviously the biggest struggle. I mean, Langford has categorically said that they will not have it in their municipality. So that leaves us in a situation of trying to find someplace else to put it. And then obviously the first thing will be us identifying the lands and finding some lands that would be most appropriate. I think Westshore Park and Rec is happy to facilitate working with you guys still to try and do it, and they're certainly willing to take on the supervision and operations of it, but they are not interested at this time on the capital build-out, and so that would fall back to the owners, and the owners groups being the 6 municipalities that make up the West Shore. And so, again, Langford has identified that they're willing to give $50,000 towards that, but we're still in that precarious situation of trying to find a piece of land. So that's sort of where we're at with that. It's a matter of, I don't know if staff would have the ability to offer up suggestions on lands that may exist within West Shore. I know there was a letter from the town of View Royal that basically encouraged or said that they were supportive of a park on the West Shore, but didn't actually specify any lands in View Royal that they would place it. So that's where we're sort of stuck right now. I said a lot without saying anything.
Anybody else? Any questions for Mr. Miller or the other representatives? Are you guys still actively meeting on a regular basis with a group?
Yes, we are meeting fairly often, I'd say bi-monthly. We have our AGM coming up, which will complete by the new year.
So that's the skateboard group. What about I
Oh, yeah,
There's been community stakeholder meetings in the past.
user group meetings. We haven't held one of those for a couple months now, but it seems as though it's opportune timing to do so.
It might be, if I could recommend that, to engage with them on that and keep bringing updates into the process, because it is a bit convoluted when you get parties that can't contribute, as trying to find ways that we can make it a fair way to get involved.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
So I get the impression that the ball is still rolling, or the wheels are still rolling. I should
Oh,
say.
they'll be turning.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Second letter that we have before us is from Legislative and Informational Services, Capital Regional District, in regards to the Island Corridor Foundation review. The letter that we have in here is looking, there were some recommendations that came out of the report, I believe is where we're headed on these. Mr. Howitt?
Yeah, Your Worship, they're seeking feedback from council on the outcome that was provided by a recent consultant report authored by Kelly Daniels.
And in that report, page 19 of 35, there were some recommendations that came out of that report that were addressed to AVICC, to the Island Corridor Foundation, to the regional district boards, and also to City of Langford. Is that what we're looking for endorsement on, or is it just to acknowledge the CRD? The issue is that we don't have the rail corridor running directly in or impacting our community, and we haven't at this point really been engaged in much of the discussion.
Thanks. Just historically, I believe Colwood has always supported our neighbors in Langford to continue to have an island rail corridor. And I believe what the letter is looking for is to have comments back on those recommendations included in the report by October 31st, and that they will be coming to the November 9th CRD board meeting.
Yeah.
So
November.
When, given the timing, I guess this is an opportunity for this council to weigh in on any of those recommendations coming forward, and just thought that might help frame the question.
Yeah. The recommendations out of the report are on page 19, I think it was.
So are they, Your Worship, are they looking at our endorsement for all these recommendations,
Or
our comments on the ICF and aka the ship without a rudder in general? I guess that's kind of what I'm seeking.
no.
Your Worship, we don't pay directly, but each member municipality may, depending on what agreements they have with the ICF on crossings, for instance. Like we have to pay for any crossings that that our roads go over their rail, and certainly if there's any unusual costs that ICF have to incur, they go to their their members, which are the regional districts, and the regional districts would requisition us if there's any of those unusual costs, but I don't know if there is any specifically with ICF and the CRD.
Councillor Day?
Sorry, I was just going to, I think that the recommendations, and I have read through them before, seem to make a lot of sense. It largely affects the regional districts that are all the way up island, through my understanding. But the idea of appointing their members at large from the public based on strategic evaluation of skill sets, that makes a lot of sense. Allowing public attendance at their annual general meeting also, I think, makes a lot of sense. So there's a lot of the recommendations that on the face of it look like just a good investment in our region in terms of, feeling that we live in a well-governed, well-thought-out civilization. But just even though the island corridor doesn't directly touch Colwood, it certainly is a tourism draw for our area and for our region. And I know that I have spoken to people from far away in the U.S. who happen to call me on a completely different matter, who've asked me specifically about our trains and how old they are and when they run. And it is something of interest to many, many people and a part of the heritage of this region. So I do think it is likely to be one more little caterpillar leg on our economic development.
So a statement along the lines that we support the outcome of the report? Councillor Knoll?
Thank you. I too have read the recommendations, and I strongly agree with a lot of them that deal with accountability and transparency, public participation, and having information available on their website. They really lack a solid business plan. They've lacked any review of their business plan that we know of. My personal feeling is that Island Rail is not an economic possibility right now, and I don't know that it ever will be. The important thing is the corridor. Maintain that as a transportation corridor, which I believe is what the foundation was made for in the first place. So I think we should support these recommendations and see where Island Corridor Foundation can take this. And I'm really hoping that that corridor is not lost. It's an island asset, it's a provincial asset, and it's a national asset.
So again, a motion to, or a recommendation to support the outcomes?
I would move that we support the recommendations on page 18 of the report.
I got 19 and 20.
18.
Oh, 18 on their written number, yes. Okay. Seconder? Any further discussion? Yes?
Thank you. I probably will support the motion, but I do struggle with the concept that the city of Colwood doesn't contribute anything into this financially, and we're being asked to comment on something that affects other municipalities directly and who also pay. And if I was to reverse the situation, I would be incredibly frustrated if I had a municipality trying to comment on something that affects Colwood and that Colwood pays for it, and having another municipality suggest that they should have as much say as my municipality. That's where I struggle with this. I probably will still support it because I don't think there's anything negative in these recommendations, but it's just from a pure principle standpoint that I don't know if we're the most appropriate people to be commenting on this.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that rail is a transportation service, so I might get to the depot by the roadway because the tracks don't come right to my municipality. But I have ridden that train many times, and I do consider it something that is of value to me and probably of value to other members of this municipality.
And I was just going to say, I think as a broader, we're members of the AVICC, which is again broader touched with it and beyond our community as well. So
my only point from an argument standpoint is I would have a very difficult time if we built a port at Royal Bay and then we expected to have Langford have the exact same say as we have in this. And that's all I'm trying to say in this, is that's where I become concerned when we start commenting on stuff that doesn't touch us directly. That's my only point.
Staff?
Your Worship, just for clarity, the ICF is owned by all the regional districts of Vancouver Island, and so this is our regional district asking us for input into something that they own, which means we own. So the rail doesn't pass through our municipality, but we certainly are, by default, an owner of ICF through the regional district. And so it's the CRD that's seeking information from us on, as a member of the CRD, on an asset essentially that they own.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5.3, letter from Minister Norm Letnick, Minister of Agriculture. It's actually, I had this included because we did write that letter to them requesting that they reinstate an agrologist for South Vancouver Island, and this letter is a follow-up to say that they have restructured work assignments within the department. The branch has been able to establish a dedicated and resourced regional agrologist to fully support South Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. So that has started as of September the 12th. So just a follow-up to council, mostly to let you know that the results of writing letters. Councillor Day?
Thanks. I thought it was great. It was a good news letter, and I just noted that in the letter it says that there's a new entrance agrologist, Natalie Hicks, who's located in Abbotsford, but who is a resource readily available to the agriculture industry. So I hope they include that for backyard sustainability gardening as well, and I intend to follow up and find out what she can tell me.
Very good. Moving into our new business section, protective services up front, 6.1.1, memorandum, senior bylaw officer, proposed changes to animal control bylaw, which we have before us.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just a follow-up from the last meeting of council where it was proposed that we make some amendments to our animal control bylaw that will help us capture some of the concerns that have been expressed about animals being used in entertainment or performances, and to add, I think just to try to find some clarification for one of our council members, just exactly what animal performance means or educational purposes mean. So staff has been consulting with the city solicitor, trying to find appropriate wording. It's almost impossible to find a perfectly worded bylaw that's going to capture everything that someone may attempt to do with an animal, or to describe it with a couple of words. So we have a bylaw that's in the package later tonight under the bylaw section that is proposing amendments. However, in some discussions that we've had with Councillor Martin, who is concerned about the definition of animal performances and what that encompasses, as well as educational use of animals and what that actually means. So tonight we circulated another version of the proposed bylaw that has some information highlighted in green that we're suggesting that this bylaw be the one that you consider this evening if you're in agreement with trying to make better clarification of animal performance and what educational can mean.
Okay. Councillor Martin, you have anything to add at this time? Nothing. Nope. So what we're looking at when we get to the bylaws, though, this is the one.
That's correct. So this evening, under this portion where we're just talking about the memo, and that was bringing a draft bylaw for staff to, or excuse me, for council to look at again with a little bit more clarification. This replacement bylaw brings even more clarification, which is really just trying to emphasize the fact that anything that is causing distress to animals is a red flag. We're just trying to find a way to capture the ability to still have petting shows or pets brought to schools or different types of performances, as long as animals are properly cared for, taken care of, there's no distress, there's no harm, things like that. So that's what we're trying to capture in this rewording of the bylaw tonight.
So a motion to receive the, oh,
Sorry,
now you have something.
Sorry, I didn't look at the fines before. Looking at the fines and for some reason it's yellowed, and I'm not sure if that was on purpose or just by accident.
The highlighting, excuse me, I'm sorry. The highlighting in yellow is to emphasize the new fines that are being brought in by the new changes, which I believe are showing under Section 12, which is talking about proper care and well-being of animals. So they need to be properly sheltered, they need to always have water, they need to be exercised.
So I've got a question on the final two ones. So everything at this seems like it's a negative, that, okay, the dog or whatever animal's done something. And then you get down to allow animal performance. Is that a permit then? Or is that somebody allowed an animal performance to happen when they shouldn't have?
That's
what
correct.
Does that mean? That's what that means? Okay.
They allowed an animal performance and it wasn't permitted.
Sanctioned.
Yes.
Got it. And then finally, feed the deer. I know some neighbors who are going to be we're going to get rich.
Legally, you're not supposed to feed wildlife.
Yeah.
Being fed from here?
Even though they feed the deers all the time around my neighborhood. So I'm just saying, I think you're going to get some pushback with some neighbors, because there's probably about 10 neighbors that feed deers down in the Esquimalt Lagoon.
Through you, Your Worship, I do believe that feeding deer is illegal anyway, so I think
I'm just saying.
if it becomes a problem, we're not going to
balance our budget so fast. 10 bylaw down for a week.
Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. I got an email actually from the Colwood resident that initiated the changes, and just wanted to offer thanks to Pat for following up with her today, and she did have a review of the bylaw and the proposed amendments, and she says she's A-okay with them, and she's very appreciative of council and staff for bringing this.
Councillor Day.
Thanks. I just wanted to confirm that these changes would still allow us to have, let's say, a dog agility show in one of our parks. They just would need to apply for a permit to do that?
Is that the understanding? Is that how that works? Well, it's not for profit or anything, right? Well, if I'm reading this correctly, my understanding is through the either permit process, because usually if we're having an event in our park, there is a permit process anyway. They would have to explain to us what their intent is. We would be making sure that it complies with, not only with the provisions of our bylaw on what we can regulate or prohibit, but then the standards of the BCSPCA Society and things like that, because they're all related, they all tie in.
Excellent. I just want to make sure we could still do it, because there's a number of dog agility groups that work within the capital region that provide excellent outreach and education opportunities for people to learn about what's important to different species. So I think that would be important to maintain.
So motion to receive the memo, and we'll be dealing with the bylaw later.
Move for seat.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Finance and Administration report from Finance on actuals results compared to budget for the 9-month period.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's always a bit of a challenge to take many, many pages of data and try and compress them into something that's succinct and understandable. So I hope that I've done that tonight. This is for your information. Basically, it's for receipt. A couple things, if you haven't noted, when our staff say they're busy in our planning and our building and our engineering departments, you can see that reflected in the revenue figures. So the first line is we've basically collected our taxes for the year. That's to be expected. But the next section, user charges, I did increase the budgets fairly significantly this year over last year, and we've already achieved the entire annual budget in the first 9 months, and you can see in most areas. So that definitely is a reflection of the development activity, whether it's building permit revenues, subdivision application permits, or user right-of-way permits, for example, in the engineering department. So I did want to highlight that. Other areas are basically on budget, or in some cases if they're under, such as fines and penalties. That's actually sort of a good news, bad news situation, because it means that we've improved our collection and people are paying on time. And the flip side to that is we are seeing an increased number of property tax deferrals. The demographic we have in Colwood, there's a lot of folks that are over 55 who are choosing to defer their property taxes. But overall, that is actually a good thing. So that's the revenue piece. And the expense side of things, I'm happy to report that most areas are basically right on budget, if not a little bit under. And I've given you just a bit of a breakdown, so when we give you general government, you can kind of see what different departments make that up. And I'm particularly interested to see that for the first time in sort of the third year going into a budget year, in my case, we've actually got legal fees coming in under budget. So we hope that trend continues. We'll see. Maybe that was just a blip for the first 9 months. I heard some giggling on my left here. So other areas, basically, so that's general government, protective services. The RCMP is always, they always lag behind in their invoicing, and we do expect that will be coming in on budget. And I just wanted to point that out because that is definitely one of our biggest budget expenditures is our RCMP coverage. And that includes the federal contract plus the municipal staff that we have working for us. So we're looking at a budget of $3.4 million. And just to put that in perspective, our total wages and benefits for the city of Colwood are approaching $7.5 to $8 million. So that gives you a bit of an idea. It's almost 50% of all of our wages and benefits for that one area. Other areas, basically, we're looking at them coming in on budget for the year. Some of the headings we use might be a little bit confusing. We have to report to the provincial government and using some of the naming conventions that they would like us to see. Environmental health services, that's your occupational health and safety, garbage collection, branch drop-off, spring cleaning, that area. And that is well within budget. And just a reminder that when we're 3/4 of the way through the year, we'd like to see a good 25% left, and we're definitely seeing that in most areas. Recreation, parks, and culture. When we're currently putting together our budget workbooks for the upcoming year, and you'll be seeing things have been shifted around a bit so that they make more sense. The library costs, the Westshore Parks and Rec costs, and then our actual parks, recreation, and culture costs will all be showing up in one workbook because they're all related. And some of those items, basically, Westshore Parks and Rec, we pay them quarterly, and we have now paid them for the entire year, so that's right on budget. And the library is right on budget. I think we just have 2 months left to pay. Our parks department looks a little bit more under budget than I had expected until I realized that quite a few of the parks' wages had been charged to the Painter Trail construction. And I'd like to point out that that project did come in under budget. And, those of you who have been there to the official opening and walked the trail did a great job, and they came in under budget as well. So hats off all the way around on that one. So that's the first couple of pages. Then I also gave you a bit of a summary of our special projects and our asset acquisitions. Special projects are those things that are kind of one-off. They're in addition to our regular core operating expenses, but they tend to be things that don't repeat every year. So with our special projects, some of those tend to be a little bit lumpier, and it depends on, sometimes there's good reason why they haven't been able to proceed. I've given you some explanations there. General government is basically going to be on budget. Protective services, I know that the fire department is just in the midst of spending on a couple of things there. Sorry, that was on assets. We'll get to that. Parks, culture, and recreation. I have spoken to our public works manager, and he is extremely good about, if he has a budget, they're going to make sure that it gets expended where it was approved and on budget. And then we get down to the more expensive items. Engineering and transportation services, I have not gone into a lot of detail because we do have a new acting director of engineering, and out of fairness to her, she needs some time to have a look at what actually is achievable on these special projects and capital assets. Where I have knowledge, I've commented on it. So the bottom section is where the big bucks are. And so under general government, I'm pleased to report that the phone system is complete and on budget. And we do have some other projects that are currently underway, such as implementing some new budget software. Protective services, the fire department, that's where I started to say earlier, they do have assets being obtained, and they'll be on budget. I talked to Mr. Amy the other day, and he is going to be acquiring a new emergency storage container, as you approved, for location on the Juan de Fuca location over by the seniors building. And again, with the engineering and transportation services, out of fairness to our new acting director of engineering, I haven't gone into a lot of detail, but I can tell you that the vehicle replacements that were in the budget will all be done this year. So for example, we've just purchased a fairly pricey new Freightliner for $215,000. That was in the budget. It's on budget. Painter trail is complete, and there was a number of other vehicles that were purchased. So that area is we're still working on that, and I'm sure we'll be coming back with some additional information, if not at a council meeting, at a budget meeting for sure. Colwood Creek Water Park equipment has been ordered. That was part of the Parks, Recreation, Culture budget, and we're expecting that will be fully expended. And the final item is the sewer acquisition summary. That's the majority of that $2.8 million budget and change. 2.4 of that is earmarked for the Colwood Central sewer expansion, and at the previous council meeting you did approve the awarding of a contract on that, and there's a lot of work being done by staff behind the scenes on that to get the contract awarded, and also to ensure that the sewer pump station is underway. And I'm not sure that will all be, it certainly won't be completed this year. We'll see how much we can get started. But the borrowing monies have been recognized. We have the money in hand. We are now starting to make payments just as of October on that new borrowing. And we will be establishing a new parcel tax, which is how we will be recovering the costs from the folks in that area to pay back the costs of those debentures over 30 years. The other item that's included in the sewer acquisition summary is the armoring of the lagoon pump station. So we did have a figure in there of about $50,000, and our public works manager has just ordered some waterproof doors for that. And as far as I know, that portion was relatively small at about $50,000, but we also had money of $260,000 in the budget to engage a consultant to look at starting the design of the new sewer pump station, because as you recall, we are going to have to relocate that. So I'm not the engineering expert, but I've covered off, sorry, Susan, if I've taken some of your thunder there, but that's basically a good snapshot. At the end of the year, I expect that we will be probably under budget due to our under expenditures on some of our projects and our asset purchases. But having said that, those monies can always be carried forward into the next year. And our revenues are actually over budget, as I pointed out at the beginning. and as a reflection of all the activity that's going on in Colwood. Thank you.
Motion to receive? Any comments, questions? Councillor Day?
Thanks. Just a couple of things that I noticed. Good news in terms of that we're actually seeing the revenue from the permits for all the talk we've heard of how busy it is behind the doors here at City Hall, which is great. But I also noticed that where I thought would be the corresponding expense isn't as high as I thought it would be in building inspection. It's in line with our budget, but with our added permit value, I'm just wondering, is there going to be a catch-up expense there?
Your Worship, we, if you recall, during the budget process last year, Council approved, I think it was approximately 6 months over 2 positions of overlap. With the retirement of Ron North, we had an overlap of, I think, 3 months, and we anticipated another retire and a potential overlap. And we've been using those funds to bring in extra auxiliary building inspectors, partly planned with Ron North, but we kept them on a bit longer because of the workload and trying to keep up with the volume. And that's really absorbed the bulk of the excess that we were going to that we thought we would experience, or that we've experienced this year, and that's why it doesn't look as bad as we thought. They are behind. They're running about 2 weeks behind right now, and we've had discussions about how to address it, and I think we'll probably bring in some more auxiliary building inspectors just to try and minimize the backlog with the building permits right now.
Thanks. And just the other thing that jumped out at me was the development services special projects, and I don't know why, but it didn't ring a bell with me.
Well, let me help you answer the bell on that one. That is the official community plan, $145,000, and we haven't been invoiced yet on that, but the project, as you know, is well underway. We'll be seeing some invoices between now and the end of the year.
Any other questions? Councillor Martin?
Thank you. I appreciate this. Thank you, Andrea. I don't have any actual questions on the actual numbers, but more what the numbers are telling us. So under revenue, obviously the conditional government transfers, we've only received 82,000, and we have 1.5 million sitting out there. Basically, and I understand that they get paid either at year end or when the project gets completed, but my concern is, are we going to get anywhere close to completing those so that we can actually realize that $1.5 million?
Okay, through you, Your Worship, we do receive just over $700,000 of gas tax monies every year, regardless. So that money comes in, and it is shown in our deferred revenues, which we've talked about before, because we haven't actually earned the money yet till we spend it on the projects. So the gas tax dollars largely are expended on some of the engineering projects and asset acquisitions. And I do need a bit of time with our acting engineer for her to get a handle on things, to see what actually is underway and what will be achieved by the end of the year.
What do you mean you don't know yet? Jeez. Welcome to Colwood, by the way. Moving on. The acquisition of capital assets, we spent $400,000. We have $1.8 million budgeted. You said see a separate report. So how much of that do you expect will actually get spent this year on acquisition of capital assets, general fund?
Well, let me just have a look here. The first few items, which is the general government protective services, those items will be done in their entirety. The unknown is the engineering and transportation services. So we have just paid some bills, and I'm expecting, I have said, between 40 to 50% of that budget. So 40 to 50% of that 1.5 million will be spent this year.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Because, for instance, there have been some bills that have just come in, like the 220,000 for the new Freightliner that
Right.
we have yet to pay. And there are a number of other projects that are definitely well underway, and the bills are just starting to roll in. So I'm suggesting that there will probably be 700,000 at least that will not be spent, if that gives you a bit of a ballpark
Okay.
figure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Day.
Sorry, just on that point, is that referring to your note that says 33% of the budget remaining when the special projects are excluded? The total engineering and transportation services line?
See here. Are you on special projects or on?
Just under protective services, and then it
Oh,
comes down to
okay.
building and then
We were
total
actually just on
engineering.
the special projects and capital assets.
Oh,
So
I
you're back
see.
in
We're on
operating.
Last
That's-
page.
Yeah, we were just discussing the special projects. and
Okay,
the
I
asset.
was in the wrong
That's-
spot.
That's the big buck items, basically.
Okay. So maybe you could just tell me what that note means under total engineering and transportation services, that there's 33% of budget remaining
Right.
when the special projects are excluded?
Yeah, so the way when you look at the operating expenses, the way our budget rolls up is it adds the special projects on, because those are actually operating costs in general. And so because we're thinking that quite a few of those special projects may not get done in the engineering department, it kind of skews it. It makes it look like there's 42% of the total budget left. And I'm saying if you take the special projects out and just look at the core expenditures in the engineering department, I'm looking at this point about 33% of the budget remaining. Now, there may be some additional year-end adjusting entries that need to be booked, which I will be discussing with you at a later date. I can't right now.
Good. Anybody else? Good to go. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item on finance and admin is the Seaside Festival debrief and recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
That's not your department.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Trace.
I was just trying to keep this meeting moving.
I just wanted to say a few things about the festival. Our Heritage Committee or Commission talked in length about this. Marcy did an outstanding job putting together this festival. She informed the Commission that she had a debrief with the staff at Fort Rod Hill, and they were overall quite happy with the event. There's a few things that they thought we could improve on, and that is starting the event a little earlier to coincide with the site opening, and having the commissioners start a little bit earlier to assist in getting volunteers to where they need to be prior to the meeting. Very successful event, good turnout, and would like to see it happen again in the following year. It's also noted that the site, it'll be free in conjunction with the 150 celebrations for 2017, but after that, there's no guarantee that the site will be free entrance, so accordingly it needs to be referred to budget deliberations. So therefore it's recommended, and I so move, that the proposal to host a Colwood Seaside Festival event to celebrate the Canada 150 in September 2017 at Fort Rod Hill and Fiskard Lighthouse National Historic Site be forwarded to the 2017 budget deliberations for consideration.
You can second it. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Well done, Marcy.
Absolutely. Yes. The pies were delicious.
The whipped cream?
Item 6.3.1, under Planning and Land Use Committee, we have a memo up. Staff taking that or council? Staff? Have at it.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the regular meeting of Council held on October 11th, 2016, Council granted final reading to each of the three subject bylaws. Council may recall that these bylaws were associated with the rezoning of 2350 and 2356 Souk Road to allow the development of a mixed-use development, including a martial arts studio and some apartments on the subject properties. It was anticipated by staff that the registration development agreement relative to this rezoning would be registered with the Land Titles Office prior to the October 11th regular meeting. However, staff are now aware that this agreement has not been registered. Therefore, in order for the city to protect its interests and ensure that no action can be taken by the developer until the agreement is registered, final reading of these three bylaws should be rescinded. If council chooses to rescind the bylaws, the staff will bring them back as soon as they're registered at Land Titles Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for the recommendation.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Discussion, anybody? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We don't have to do it a bunch of times. We can just do it all in one, correct? Just one simple rescind.
Moving the recommendation is
One, yeah, no, first, second, and thirds, and whatever. Moving on, 6.3.2. Item here is development variance permit, DVP.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor? I'm sorry. Best process probably is for each bylaw full citation to be read out and that final reading of October 11th be rescinded.
Okay.
So I would move that bylaw number 999, 2008, amendment number 8, 2350 and 2356, Souk Road, bylaw number 1553, 2014, final reading be rescinded.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And I would move that Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151, 1989, amendment number 144, CD 23 Zone 2350 Souk Road and 2356 Souk Road, bylaw number 1554, 2014, final reading be rescinded.
Second. Oh.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And keeping it going, I'll move that Colwood Subdivision and Development Bylaw 1995, amendment number 52, Schedule A, CD 23 Zone, bylaw number 1584, 2015, final reading be rescinded.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, folks, for indulging me on that. Just wanted to make sure we had it the correct way. Item 6.3.2, again, the development variance permit for DVP 16019-3314 Fulton Road.
Thank you, Worship. Here, the applicant is requesting to vary section 5.6.06 of the Land Use Bylaw, number 151, relaxing the minimum front yard setback for a principal building from 7.5 meters to 4.9 meters in order to facilitate a two-lot subdivision and to bring the existing building into conformance with the current setback requirement in the process. The Director of Planning noted that the preliminary lot layout assessment has been issued for the subdivision of the land, and that Council recently approved a request to vary the frontage and driveway standards. Staff have absolutely no objections to the applicant's request, given that they don't anticipate it will conflict with the character of the neighborhood, and that the purpose of the variance will preserve the existing dwelling. It was recommended, and I so move the motion before us.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
If I may make one comment, if there's an excess of money from permitting, either you could give me some back, or you could get that air conditioning fixed, because it's hard on the ears. I mean, when you heard it, you don't hear it until it shuts off, but whew, I fly WestJet all the time, and WestJet's quieter than that. So. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rob, you've got some competition.
Moving into transportation public infrastructure, one item before us. Item 6.4.1, report engineering admin supervisor regulate vehicle speed in the city of Colwood. Somebody taking it down there?
Your Worship, members of council, what's before you today is changes to the speed regulation bylaw to reflect council's wishes for a portion of a very much larger project known as the Machosen Road project, which is which you're probably all much more aware of than I am of all the pieces. But this is coming forward now because there's clearly no reason to delay it anymore. And the project overall is now underway. We have been out to the public, and on September the 21st, we've got some really good feedback, and we are now in the process of putting together the RFP for construction. So this is just reflecting one piece, which was to change the speed along Metchosin, and as we were looking at the bylaw, we found there was some housekeeping needed. There were some areas where we had already put signage up at council's request, but did not make bylaw changes that reflect that. So that's why this is a little more complete than just that one section of road.
Now or the recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation and then I'll
looking for
just have
Jason
a
to
question.
move the recommendation.
Madam Mayor, I think that there is direction there about installing the signs that might be required.
Yeah, maybe that's where you can go with it, Jason, the second part of that.
Second. That's kind of it's like having half a movement.
And then we can deal with bylaws and bylaws. Okay. Seconder?
Second.
Any discussion? Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward, because this was a commitment that was given to the residents at that meeting on September 21st, which I attended. The question that I've had back is when can they expect fourth reading to happen? And then the other question was, how soon after fourth reading would signage go up and the speed limit be in effect? Just so I can respond to them.
I can only respond to how soon after the fourth reading, but there's virtually no time needed. We can do it almost a week later.
Okay, and so probably procedurally, if we give 3 readings today, the fourth reading would be in 2 weeks' time. Would that be logical to assume? Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Question, with the signage, and we're changing that speed to address school zones and whatever, something that I saw recently in a couple of articles, one being Steve Wallace's drive program and whatever, is about also identifying when you've left the appropriate school zone, and it's just a matter of a sign on the back side of entering, and then the other. Is that being considered in this as well?
I can't answer that. I don't know what's standard here in Colwood. I do know that in Nanaimo, that's what we did. Anyone have any comments? Is that what normally happens here? We could do that, though.
Something to consider, just that it seems to be picking up in other municipalities. It also, when we're making changes on there, I've been the crosswalk guard in that area and zone, and so everything and anything we can do to try and identify it is helpful, I'm sure.
Your Worship, just for clarity, perhaps Council could direct staff to provide exiting school or playground zone signs from this point forward, if it's Council's wish for us to do that. It just avoids the uncertainty in the future.
I'll leave it to Council to make the suggestion.
So moved.
Discussion on that add-on? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so, and then overall, all those in favor of the recommendation? Makes motion carries. Bylaws then. Item 7.1, bylaw number 1612. This is the speed regulation bylaw.
Move introduction.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move second.
Any discussion, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Move third.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Bylaw number 1656, final reading for bylaw number 1359, 2010, amendment number 4.
Move final.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Bylaw number 1651, first, second, and third readings. This is the animal control bylaw. Are you looking to make some changes, Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Pat, help me.
Oh, she's been trying.
Ian, could you help me, please? Pat, I'm done with Pat. Yeah, I'll move down to Marcy if Ian can't help me. You're terrible. Go ahead, Pat. I need your help. So, what are we doing? How do I move? Is this already accepted? Is this what we're moving, or do I need to make an emotion to amend this proposal?
Yeah, you need to make a motion to take those colored areas.
I would like
insert them into the.
All right, I would like to make a motion on bylaw numbers 1651 to add anything that's green.
There's some yellow.
Do I want to add the yellows? The yellows, I think, already existed.
I think the motion that you're looking for is to add the words under section 2A, animal performances.
Yeah, and 2B.
And 2B, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're okay with the rest of them? They're just highlighting notes?
That's correct. The yellow highlight was just to point out the new fine schedule based on the new provisions of the bylaw.
Okay. So we're adding those two sections.
Thanks for your help, Pat.
We need a seconder, please, for Councillor Martins.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now we can go to the bylaw, please, for first, second, and third readings as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 7.4, bylaw number 1652, again, first, second, and third readings for the MTI for bylaw 1314, amendment number 6. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, before us, bylaw number 1653 for final reading on Colwood Main Sewer Local Service Area bylaw, establishment and loan bylaw number 598, 2001, amendment number 51.
Move final.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move adjournment.
Second. Sure.
All those in favor?
Second for adjournment.
No. All those in favor?